I want to give one example of a man named Abu Afak who was more than 100 years old. Because if you want to talk about someone who's obviously not a threat, not a military threat to you, it would be a guy who's over 100 years old. What do you think the penalty was for this man who's over 100 years old, writing a poem, right? Keep in mind, he wrote a poem saying, you guys would have been better following someone else than following this guy who's just going to divide a wonderful group of people. What's the penalty for this guy? Going to ignore him, right? Because he's over 100 years old. And because Islam's a religion of peace and tolerance, Muhammad's going to just gently correct him, right?
Well, of course, because according to Muslims, what the Quran says, Muhammad is a mercy unto mankind. In fact, it says a mercy to all creatures, not just mankind. He's also a mercy to the jinn, right? Which we call genies. So he's a mercy to mankind, genies. Obviously, the Prophet of mercy would overlook such an insult, because after all, he's over 100 years old, and it's just a poem.
Now, what actually happened, Sam?
He got murdered.
Muhammad ordered his followers to murder this man. He was stabbed to death for criticizing. Right, yeah. There was a woman named Asma bint Marwan, and what actually happened to her, Sam?
She got murdered as well.
And was in her bed with her children at the time, right?
Yeah.
And this didn't stop Muhammad's one of Muhammad's followers from coming in there, slaughtering her. Actually had to pull one of her nursing babies away from her,
suckling a baby, right?
To slaughter her. And what was one of the sad things about this story is the man who did it actually felt bad over it. The man who did it felt bad, and then Muhammad says, what? 2 goats won't butt their heads over her.
And don't feel bad, because no one's going to do anything about this murder.
Assalamu alaikum, and hello to my non-Muslim viewers. Christian hate monger David Wood and Sam the Scam Shamoon have made a video a little bit ago called The Killing of Asma bint Marwan and Abu Afak. So now, what is the source behind the killing of Abu Afak and Asma bint Marwan? It's this book. They cite this book, which is The Life of Muhammad, a translation of Ibn Asak's Sirat Rasulullah by Alfred Guillaume. So if you go to David Wood's blog, you'll find the killing of Abu Afak and Asma bint Marwan on his blog site and things like that. But anyways, the source behind those stories is this book, The Life of Muhammad, a translation of Sirat Rasulullah by Alfred Guillaume. So what is the page number? The page number is 600 and let's see. The page number would be page 600 and would be the killing of Abu Afak would be page 660, page 675, and the killing of Asma bint Marwan is also the same, page 675. So if we go to page 675 of this book, they're going to suck 675. We see that there's no isnad, there's no chain of transmission for the first story, which is Umar bin Abi's journey to kill Asma bint Marwan. So what David Wood says and Sam Shamoon and all those people say is the Prophet Muhammad ordered someone named Umar bin Abi to kill Asma bint Marwan. But if we look at the story in this book, The Life of Muhammad, Ibn Asak's The Life of Muhammad, we don't see any isnad, or we don't see any chain of transmission. So then if we go to the other story, which is the killing of Abu Afak, Salam bin Umair's expedition to kill Abu Afak. Again, we don't see any. The critics say that the Prophet Muhammad sent Salim bin Umair to kill Abu Afak, but when we read the story, we don't see any chain of transmission for the story. And again, I'm reading both stories from this book, The Life of Muhammad, translation of Sirat Rasulullah. So there's no isnad, or there's no chain of transmission for the story found in Ibn Ishaq's book. In order to get into why the story is weak and false, I just recommend buying this book, getting this book, Prophet of Islam, in light of the original sources and analytical study, volume 1, where on page 432, he talks about the affair, or I'm sorry, on page 431, he talks about the affair of Asma bin Marwan, and on page 433, he talks about Abu Afak's affair, the killing of Abu Afak. So, anyways, according to this book, according to the Isnad of the story in this book, it said that this was reported by Ibn Ishaq through a chain which he did not clearly mention whether he himself heard. It is part of a report narrated in connection with the death of Asma, so it is weak. So, this story is weak because there's no chain of transmission, for the story. What about Abu Afak? If we, according to page 43 of this book, and again, I'm reading from the Prophet of Islam in light of the original sources and analytical study, volume 1. Again, I'm reading from this book. Abu Afak, in the footnote, it says that the Abu Afak affair, in the footnote, I'm reading from footnote 6 in page 433 of this book, The Life of the Prophet of Islam, volume 1. It says Ibn Ishaq reported it through a suspended mulak chain, as also Ibn Hajar in Ibn Hajar's book Al-Iskaba, volume 4, page 238. Also Mula'ik and Al-Waqidi, volume 1, page 174 to 175. Mention the story in Ibn Sa'd, volume 2, page 28, without a chain of transmission. So Al-Waqidi was a known liar, like I said in previous videos. If Al-Waqidi is narrating the story, then he's a known liar. So according to Hadith's terminologies and studies, so this story already has a weak narrator, which is Al-Waqidi. And Ibn Sa'd reported it in Ibn Sa'd, volume 2, page 28. Ibn Sa'd reported it without a chain of transmission. So, the isnad for the Ibn Ishaq story of Abu Afak is with a suspended mu'allaq chain of transmission. So even Ibn Hajar, a Islamic scholar, said in his book Al-Isaba, volume 4, page 232, the chain of transmission is mu'allaq. That means it's a suspended chain. That means we don't know who the people narrating. There's gaps in the story. We don't know who narrated the story. So there's a suspended or disconnected chain of transmission. So that's why we can't take the stories of Ibn Ishaq, or we can't take the Ibn Ishaq story of the killing of Abu Afak and the killing of Asma bin Marwan seriously, because the first story, the killing of Asma bin Marwan, there's no chain of transmission. The second story, the killing of Abu Afak, there's a suspended chain of transmission. So that means we don't know who the missing people in the chain of transmission are. And again, in order to refute this story and many other stories like the Satanic versus the suicide attempts of the Prophet Muhammad, etc., I recommend getting this book, A Biography of the Prophet of Islam, in light of the original sources and analytical study, volume 1, where this person talks about, how there's, in every story of the Prophet Muhammad, he gives what the chain of transmission is, where the source of that story is, and he talks about whether that the isnad or the chain of transmission is trustworthy or whether it's not trustworthy. So again, I just recommend this book, The Prophet of Islam, in light of the original sources and analytical study, volume 1. So this is a really good book to read and refuting, and finding out whether the stories, the Christian critics, these atheists or Christian critics of Islam, they state whether it's true or not. I just recommend getting this book. This is an excellent book that gives the references and then tells you whether the chain of transmission is authentic or not. So again, I just recommend this book. This is in 2 volumes, so you can buy it on Amazon or whatever. So or any other bookstore. So anyways, that's all I want to say about the killing of Abu Afak and Asma bin Marwan. Both these stories are forgeries. Most of the time they quote from this book, The Life of Muhammad, a translation of Ibn Ishaq Sirat Rasulullah by Afak. And this book refutes itself because you read the introduction. The introduction gives a bunch of people that say Ibn Ishaq is a weak narrator, or it's a weak book to begin with. People like El Nisa, etc., etc. So I just recommend getting this book and reading the introduction, and you'll see what I'm talking about. So that's all I want to say about the killing of Asma bin Marwan and the killing of Abu Afak. Thanks.